Hello and welcome to the news on NTAi International. I am Stella Inameti and my sign language interpreter is Precious Ozoemena. And let's begin with the headlines. World Health Organization adopts landmark pandemic agreement. A bill to establish an agency to manage assets and property from unlawful activities passes second reading at Senate. Advocacy for alternative dispute resolution with premium on people-centered justice underway. Thanks for joining us. Now the news in full. The UN Health Agency has adopted a landmark pandemic agreement for tackling future health crises after more than 3 years of negotiations sparked by the COVID-19 crisis. The World Health Organization's decision-making annual assembly adopted the plan at its Geneva headquarters. Francis Udojo has the details.
The accord aims to prevent the disjointed response and international disarray that surrounded the COVID-19 pandemic by improving global coordination and surveillance and access to vaccines in any future pandemics. The text of the agreement was finalized by consensus last month following multiple rounds of tense negotiations. The United States pulled out of those talks following U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw his country from the WHO, a process that takes 1 year to complete. However, WHO Chief Tedros Ghebreyesus, in a statement, said, "The world is safer today thanks to the leadership, collaboration and commitment of its member states to adopt the historic WHO pandemic agreement." The agreement, he added, is a victory for public health, science and multilateral action. It will ensure the body, collectively, can better protect the world from future pandemic threats. Official says it is also a recognition by the international community that its citizens, societies and economies must not be left vulnerable to again suffer losses like those endured during COVID-19. Earlier, the negotiations grew tense amid disagreements between wealthy and developing countries, with the latter feeling cut off from access to vaccines during the COVID-19 pandemic. Countries have until May 2026 to thrash out the details of the agreement's pathogen access and benefits sharing mechanism. Francis Udojo, NTAi News.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen warned that the EU's current budget has reached breaking point after 5 years of crisis management. While speaking in Brussels on Tuesday, the EU president explained, and quote, "If you think of the floods in Italy, the earthquake in Croatia, but also Putin's full-scale invasion and the energy blackmail we went through. So, over the past 5 years, time and again, our budget has punched above its weight. And we must also see now, today, that we have reached the limits of what is possible," end of quote. The EU chief warned that the financial framework set in 2020 is outdated in the face of mounting geopolitical instability, trade disruptions, accelerating climate change, and technological upheaval.
I remember the long meetings with our services every time an emergency hit. And every time we managed to find creative ways to mobilize our financial firepower for the people and for the business of Europe. So, over the past 5 years, time and again, our budget has punched above its weight. And we must also see now, today, that we have reached the limits of what is possible.
Russia launched a military offensive in Ukraine in late February 2022 after recognizing the independence of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. claiming that Kyiv had failed to guarantee their special status under the 2014 Minsk Agreement and urging Ukraine to declare itself officially neutral and give assurances that it will never join NATO. Kyiv denounced the Russian action as an invasion. Zelensky imposed martial law throughout the country, announcing a general mobilization, while the EU and the US imposed several rounds of sanctions on Moscow. South Africa President Cyril Ramaphosa is in Washington, D.C. on a visit that is expected to include high-stakes meeting with his U.S. counterpart, Donald Trump. Francis Odojo reports that the purpose of the visit is to reset and revitalize bilateral relations between South Africa and the United States.
Ramaphosa's office says securing South Africa's trade ties with the United States will be a key aim of President Cyril Ramaphosa, who began a Washington visit that will feature a meeting with Donald Trump. Ramaphosa arrived U.S. accompanied by 4 cabinet ministers on the high-stakes visit. He is expected to meet Trump at the White House on Wednesday. In this regard, the visit, officials say, will focus specifically on reframing bilateral economic and commercial relations. Ties between Pretoria and Washington have declined since Trump, whose administration notably features South Africa-born Elon Musk at the head of the Department of Government Efficiency, took office in January. Ramaphosa's visit is seen as an attempt to reset the relationship. The United States is South Africa's second-largest trading partner after China. Trump's sweeping trade tariffs announced in April subsequently paused for 90 days, including a levy of 31% on South African imports, which some industries say could result in massive layoffs. With South Africa's unemployment at about 32%, economic growth and job creation is also a priority for Ramaphosa's government. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has signed a bill making it a federal crime to post revenge porn, whether it is real or generated by artificial intelligence. The Take It Down Act, passed with overwhelming bipartisan congressional support, criminalizes non-consensual publication of intimate images, while also mandating their removal from online platforms. With the rise of AI image generation, countless women have been harassed with deepfakes and other explicit images distributed against their will, Trump says at the signing ceremony in the Rose Garden of the White House.
With the rise of AI image generation, countless women have been harassed with deepfakes and other explicit images distributed against their will. This is the wrong, and it's just so horribly wrong. And it's a very abusive situation, like in some cases people have never seen before. And today we're making it totally illegal.
This legislation is a powerful step forward in our efforts to ensure that every American, especially young people, can feel better protected from their image or identity being abused through non-consensual or intimate imagery of I and NTAi.
Websites that fail to remove the images promptly within 48 hours will face civil liabilities, Trump said. First Lady Melania Trump endorsed the bill in early March and attended the signing ceremony in a rare public White House appearance. Francis Udojo, NTAi News.
Hungary's parliament passed a bill formalizing the country's withdrawal from the International Criminal Court, ICC, on Tuesday, making it the first EU member state to do so. The bill passed with 134 in favor, 37 against and 7 abstentions. All lawmakers from the ruling Fidesz party, along with their Christian Democratic allies, supported the legislation, which opposition parties strongly objected. Debates leading up to the vote were heated, particularly during an April session in which the opposition warned of the diplomatic consequences. The government pressed ahead, framing the decision as a stand against what it views as growing politicization within the ICC. Foreign Minister Peter Shijato said Hungary believes that politics and geopolitics have no place in international legal organizations while introducing the bill. He accused the court of being used by some countries as a tool to advance their agendas in global conflicts. This comes months after an ICC arrest warrant was issued in November 2023 for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, accusing him of war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza. Hungary criticized the warrant, with Prime Minister Viktor Orban calling it outrageous and shameful. The government's decision to quit the ICC was announced shortly after Netanyahu's visit to Budapest in early April. The ICC, established in 2002 and based in The Hague, investigates and prosecutes individuals accused of the world's gravest crimes, including genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Hungary has been a party to the Rome Statute, the court's founding treaty, for over 2 decades. Adoption of proper early warning system to assist member states in coping with adverse effects of climate change is being worked out at regional level. At the 14th meeting of Committee of Directors of Hydrological and Meteorological Services in Abuja, Nigeria, pledged to lead the regional efforts. Kelvin NTAi reports.
ECOWAS data shows that between 2021 and 2024, there was 47% increase in flooding across the sub-region, affecting 5 million people with $1.2 billion lost in food production. Hence, the need for accurate meteorological data services to aid adaptation and mitigation in member states has become imperative. This meeting of directors of hydrological and meteorological agencies of member states is therefore to review earlier work and state of implementation of the technical committee. Nigeria's Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, emphasized that Nigeria will lead the regional effort at developing and adoption of common meteorological systems that will assist member states not only to prepare for climate impact, but adequately cope with adverse effects on food security in the region, where about 2.5% of annual budget is going into climate change mitigation efforts.
NIMET's contributions to the development and practice of meteorology in ECOWAS sub-region cover a wide range of areas, from the provision of technical support to Liberia, Sierra Leone, and the Gambia, to hosting regional training and capacity building programs at the World Meteorological Organization WMO Regional Training Center, ROTC, in Lagos.
Africa is heavily on the receiving end of the impacts of climate change. The Africa State of the Climate Report for 2023 and 2024 have revealed the growing trend, frequency, and intensity of extreme events such as heat waves, floods, drought on our continent, and of course, West Africa.
The meeting will dissolve into technical sessions where diverse areas of meteorological services, especially application of technology, will be explored. In Abuja, Kelvin NTAi, NTAi News.
Reports just reaching us indicates that President Bola Tinubu has returned to Abuja after his trip to Rome, where he participated at the inaugural Mass of Pope Leo XIV. The president's plane touched down at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, at about 6:45 this Tuesday evening. The president was one of the world leaders invited for the inauguration and as the new pope formally assumed the leadership of the Roman Catholic Church. We'll take a break now and we'll be back with more news. Stay with us. Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Nigeria is gearing up for the 62nd session of the subsidiary bodies, SB 62 of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The National Council on Climate Change Secretariat, in collaboration with GES, has initiated a vital retraining program for Nigerian negotiators attending the crucial climate talks in Bonn, Germany. Charles Alpha reports.
Negotiations are critical components of a country's climate actions. They are indeed central at any of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, such as the subsidiary bodies SB and Conference of Parties, COP. The 62nd session of this year's subsidiary bodies holds next month in Bonn, Germany, and National Council on Climate Change is not leaving any stone unturned. Capacities of negotiators from states and the FCT are currently being built in line with Nigeria's climate priorities, which are mitigation and adaptation by the Council, GIZ and other partners ahead of the forthcoming SB in Germany and COP30 in Brazil.
We need to take negotiations very seriously because that is where the agenda for action is set. We expect that you bring your various sector expertise into the different agenda items that we're going to look at.
This training is designed to sharpen your negotiation and leadership skills for impactful global climate negotiations.
Nigeria has national priorities, and these priorities must translate into positions.
Focus for these negotiators will be on climate finance, just transition trajectory, natural gas as a transitional fuel, the loss and damage fund, and scaling nature-based solution. Charles Alpha, NTAi News.
Members of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, like other professionals, have been identified as critical partners who should join efforts in disseminating the ongoing reforms of the current administration by developing and promoting balanced narratives to stimulate growth. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, a fellow of the Institute, reaffirmed this at the opening of the 2025 Nigerian Public Relations Week in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State. Salihu Abdullahi Gwanara reports.
Nigeria's enormous human and material resources are being harnessed as part of reforms to sustain the emerging indicators towards a national prosperity. Stakeholders at this event, led by the government spokesman, agreed that the government's interventions towards socio-economic rebirth require image rebranding.
You can't, at the time that you are inviting the world to come to you, also be telling the world that your country is not ready for them. You cannot promote your country if you continue to say bad things about your country. Of course, constructive criticisms are always welcome. But you cannot, just because you have what is called press freedom, keep away the responsibility that comes with it and say whatever bad thing you can think of about your country. I'm calling on all Nigerians, the young and the old, the media professionals, and everyone. We must come together and speak good about our country. This is the only country that we have.
In line with the theme of this event, the minister acknowledged that the Renewed Hope agenda is paving the way for Nigeria's economic renaissance.
From the Port Harcourt refineries that have come back to life, and the approval of 80 billion naira for the reconstruction of the failed Alau Dam in Borno State, to the progress on the construction of the Kano-Kaduna standard gauge railway line, no part of Nigeria has been left behind by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in this massive allocation of infrastructure investments so that Nigeria can collectively become the destination for everyone.
That this conference will remain true to its foundational ideals by continually partnering with government to serve our nation, thereby igniting economic renaissance.
Highlight was the presentation of awards, including that of posthumous to distinguished members, and the inauguration of the body of advisors for the Nigeria Reputation Management Group. In Uyo, Akwa Ibom State, Salihu Abdullahi Gwanara, NTAi News.
Advocacy for people-centered justice as a means of closing the gap in the justice sector is underway. This is the core of discourse at the meeting between the Hague Institute for Innovation of Law and civil society organizations on judicial reforms. Dele Atumbi of our Judiciary Desk reports.
People-centered justice is a universal concept dealing with a shift in the justice system, prioritizing the needs, rights and experiences of individuals, particularly those most vulnerable, marginalized, or at risk. The concept emphasizes making the justice system more responsive to people's needs, ensuring access to fair, accountable services, and just outcomes. As one of the concepts of the rule of law, people-centered justice places premium on ensuring that justice is accessible, affordable, and easy to understand. This is achieved in collaboration with justice providers, including ministries of justice and judiciaries, with the aim of developing solutions that enable more individuals to prevent or resolve their justice challenges. Participants at the meeting have the view that the concept not only benefits people directly, but also fosters safe, stable societies where economic growth, innovation, and entrepreneurship thrive.
I feel that justice is fundamental. We cannot conceive of a stable society, a prosperous society, a safe and secure society that doesn't have justice as its bedrock.
Justice reform, but people-centered. And a good example is that most land matters are settled with traditional rulers. But if it's not archived by the legal courts, if it's not recognized...
Participants are also to come up with locally owned strategies that innovatively and effectively produce a more user-friendly justice system. In Abuja, Dele Atumbi, NTAi News.
Now, Senate has passed for second reading a bill to establish an agency that will manage assets and properties derived from unlawful activities. The bill seeks to provide a legal framework for the seizure, confiscation, forfeiture, and management of assets obtained through illegal activities. The bill aims to ensure transparency, accountability, and provide adequate protection for the recovered properties. The agency, when established, will collaborate with the directorates of proceeds of crime in the 18 existing agencies for the administration of forfeited or recovered assets. The House of Representatives has called for stiffer regulations against the importation of foreign textiles into the country to give room for revival of the local textile industry. Passing the resolution at Tuesday's plenary, lawmakers sought collaboration between the Federal Ministry of Power and the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment to facilitate power supply and more incentives to local textile manufacturing companies. NTAi Ikben has details.
A thriving textile industry no doubt will create jobs and boost economic growth. But lawmakers draw attention to the proliferation of foreign textiles in the country, suffocating local manufacturers. They advocate incentives for the textile industry to compete favorably.
The Ministry of Finance, Industry, Trade and Investment and other related agencies to encourage local textiles by providing soft loans, easy access to credit facilities through the Bank of Industries.
This motion is referred to the Committees on Industry and Commerce for further legislative action.
Several bills scaled second reading. They include the FCT 2025 budget of 1.78 trillion naira, as well as legislations to establish a national ear center in Abia State and to provide social protection rights for older persons.
Some of these rights include right to freedom from discrimination, right to freedom from abuse, neglect and exploitation, right to health and social services.
To mark this year's World Hypertension Day, medical experts were in plenary to advocate health insurance coverage for hypertension and other non-communicable diseases.
Medications are getting more and more expensive. Most of our patients cannot afford medication. We need to register more people under the health insurance scheme.
In 1990, when we conducted the national survey, there were less than 10% of people between the ages of 18 and 65 who were hypertensive. As at today, 40% of people above the age of 18 are hypertensive.
Motions were also raised on incessant kidnappings in Edo State and the plight of communities ravaged by rainstorm in Delta State.
On these communities of Jedo, Ugbokodo, and Ugoton of Okpe local government area of Delta State, aware that roofs of over 2,000 houses were completely or partially damaged. Hundreds of big buildings were destroyed.
Another group of bandits struck Iviaro community and kidnapped the community leader and killed the spouse. Immediately deployed personnel to Era and Iviaro communities and surrounding areas to restore peace, apprehend the culprits, and forestall further occurrences.
At the Committee of the Whole, reports were considered and approved for the establishment of several health institutions from the National Assembly, Mitaire Ikpen, NTAi News.
President Bola Tinubu rejoices with a renowned industrialist and philanthropist, Prince Lawal Obelawo, on his 95th birthday. President Tinubu says invaluable contributions to nation building through various platforms have defined Prince Obelawo's life. And that's the news on NTAi International. Thanks for watching. I am Stella Inamiti, and my sign language interpreter is Precious Ozoemena.